And we are back. This is the first conversation of the day. In case you're just joining us, you are right on time. We'll be discussing about youths for climate change. We've been talking about climate change, youths for climate justice. We've been talking about the matter climate change. So how do we exactly come in to help with the problem of climate change? So there are people that are already doing something, and we have these people right here with us, and they're both from Pan-Africa Climate Justice Alliance, PACJA. We have Charles Mwangi. He's the head of programs and research at Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. And we have Shampi Anna, who is a youth advocate for climate justice and also an alumni of cohort 3, the third cohort, right? Most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, all right, let me start with you, Shampi. Just tell us a little bit, in case I've missed something, why are you doing this?
That question.
Why are you an advocate?
Yes. So from ever since time immemorial, as I told you, my roots are from the northeastern of Kenya, particularly Moyale. And my mom used to tell me that, you know, this barren, this dry land that you see here, a river used to pass here, but it's no longer there. And for me, things like that really used to bother me, because I really used to love like nature, just growing up. And then when we came to Nairobi, it was beautiful. The place looked so green. I used to hate the way people would dump things all over. For me, that disorderliness was just bad. And I think growing up, getting exposed to, you know, people like Wangari Maathai and the things they're doing, I used to be so inspired. So for me back then, caring for the environment was good, and for me it was mostly about planting trees. And for the longest time, that was what was in my mind. That's how we do it. But then when I got to uni, I realized there's a concept called climate change. And then this thing, okay, so all of a sudden now, it's not like the way the weather patterns were predictable before. We couldn't predict them anymore. And I was realizing this. And my environment was changing. We could no longer see the beautiful butterflies we used to see when I was growing up. So one time I was watching this Netflix show, my favorite one, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. It's based off a story of a boy from Malawi. They used to depend on rain-fed agriculture. It used to flourish. All of a sudden, mvua ilipotea, and they didn't have rain for a long time. People were starving, people were dying, people were turning into looters. And one time this boy decided to have a project, which afterwards I came to realize that was actually an adaptation project. He mobilized the village, they dug up they constructed a windmill, and they were able to pump water, and the village was able to be saved even when there was drought. So I just sat and I thought, I have a friend who went to some school, and my friend is talking about climate change. I reached out to him, and he told me about the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. I was like, I want to go there, I must go there. February last year when they were launching it, I was there. When the application was released, I think I was like the first one, I don't know, to apply for it. And when I got in there, it was more than what I thought it was. That school changed my life. I got to know about concepts I never even thought existed, the reality of the global north and the global south, what our role is as Kenya and indeed Africa in this climate change space, the injustice issues that have been happening because of climate change. Our people are suffering because of things they know not of and they don't understand. I have gone to uni, I have done everything possible. Nowhere in my education was I taught these things, who is guilty, who is not. And above all, I met people who are doing, youth like me, who are doing amazing things all over the world. And for me, it was an intense moment, it was life-changing, and I can't wait to want to do more. I can't wait to proceed. I could say it's been like a lifesaver. I now want to help to save this earth because of the children that are coming, my future children, and also this current generation that we're living in. I think that sums up my why.
That's a good answer to the why. You know, you're so passionate about it, and you can see how important it is, you know, having climate justice. But now, to you, Charles, you are the head of programs and research at PACJA. So, you know, what is the institution all about?
So thank you so much. Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is a civil society alliance that is present in 51 countries in the continent. Okay. But we came to be in 2008 in Johannesburg, South Africa, when like-minded Africans sat together and they realized that for sure we need to agitate for justice for the African people. The concept of climate justice was not very common in Africa. It was a foreign concept. yet Africans are the ones who understand really the real meaning really of climate justice or injustice, so to say, that they're experiencing as a result of the many impacts of climate change, that are being experienced, especially across, the continent. And just to mention that, climate change is actually caused by greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases actually are as a result of industrialization. And developed nations, of course, industrialize much faster than Africa. And we are where we are now because of the impact, of the industrialization that is so much rampant in the West. And this means that about 97% of greenhouse gases emissions are actually, from Western countries mostly, and part of Asia. And Africa only accounts for about 3-point-something%, something less than 4% of total greenhouse gases emissions. But you heard what Shampi Anna told you, that she comes from northeastern Kenya. So the impacts that are being felt there, you can't fathom, the kind of impacts that are felt, by communities, especially, the pastoralist communities. We experienced the worst drought in 40 years, beginning of last year. And I'm told we lost more than 2 million animals, actually, in the Horn of Africa region. Wow. Probably even more. And so to say also lives, and all these impacts, are being felt here, even though we are emitting, like I mentioned, less than 4% as a continent. Look at what happened in Malawi and Mozambique. Cyclones that have become now rampant, almost regular, So all those impacts, and many other countries are also experiencing the same, is what Africa is going through, is what Africa has to contend with, yet we are not the emitters. And that is what underpins the concept of climate justice. And therefore, our clarion call is that those who have contributed to emissions must also contribute, to bringing the solutions that we need, the aspect of, distributive and retributive justice. But most importantly also to mention that our work actually is focused on policy advocacy to ensure that we have proper policy frameworks, that will allow climate action. And that is why we work all the way from some national level, where we work, for example, in Kenya with counties, supporting, their climate policies. We work at national level in terms of working with governments, in policy processes and contributing to the same, but at the same time, also holding governments to account. Because governments, of course, commit, to climate action, but sometimes you don't see, that happening. So we have to keep, them on their toes, by tracking, to ensure that they actually honor their commitments, and not just our governments internally, but governments from the West. There was a commitment to actually avail about 100 billion, US dollars to deal with climate change, which has never seen the light of the day. Right now, we have several funds, adaptation fund, for example, which is now not almost functional. Loss and damage facility that was just approved a few years ago, 2 years ago. And our clarion call is that we must ensure that these resources are available, and they're available to the communities at the front end of climate crisis. So that's what we do. But most importantly, just to also mention and to connect to what Shampi Anna mentioned, our biggest focus is ensuring that our young people in the continent, and considering that our young people are the majority, actually more than 70% of us are actually young people below that 5 years of age. And we must really appreciate the power that is within our young people. We must appreciate the potential that is in young people like Shampi here. And it's upon that realization that we have one of our critical and phenomenal program that we have in the Alliance, which is the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice, which we started 3 years ago. We have done now 3 cohorts. The last cohort was cohort 3, and Shampi Anna was a beneficiary of that cohort. We have been able to impact, lives of more than 1,500 young people across the continent. Last year, especially, we had about 73 countries represented. Africa has 54, so you'd ask where are the 73 countries. The program is now attracting more young people from outside the continent. In fact, we most of the times have to just pick a few, because we thought this is just an African issue. But we realize that many people across the continent, the world really want to be empowered. And it's a program really that is well thought out. We have modules that are carefully thought, and we have a faculty of more than 40, professors, both academic but also professors of practice, who sit, and craft the program and the modules so that we're able to impact in the lives of our young people. And we have seen transformation in our young people. I'm going to share that probably in the next few minutes.
Yeah, so speaking of, the transformation and the impact that you've seen, so Shampi being a beneficiary of, the school, the summer school, so what did you take from it, and what are you doing in your own capacity as an alumni?
Okay, so what I took from it. So summer school was more of information gaining and knowledge and just knowing all about that. What I like about PACJA and its program is that it really doesn't end there. They keep on involving you even afterwards. So in class, it was more of theoretical, and then we got to the practical bits. We were actually being involved and put at the forefront of international forums. We were taken to other countries to participate in conversations meaningfully as the youth. You would get into a room and get confused. You would think it's a youth festival, but in reality, it's just a group of youth from all over Africa who have been first of all educated and empowered, are interested in this, and we're engaging in meaningful conversations, getting to understand concepts such as adaptation. Why do we need the money? What's the money for? Loss and damages. One of the saddest things that I took from my time at Nairobi Summer School, and it still continues to push me and to know where our priorities should be, even as a country and as the youth, was that even in 20 years, if Africa did nothing to contribute to the emissions going on, we would still be suffering the same consequences. And we're looking at here in Kenya, Asal region specifically. When there is drought, it is extreme drought. And when it floods, it's extreme. What then does this mean? That we lack drainage, we lack adaptation capacities, we lack resilience. So meaning that all this time our priorities have been misplaced. Why do we want to wait for the catastrophe to happen to start kupeleka chakula huko, ama kupeleka mablanketi, ama kupeleka, those clean cooking things, while we can do something to prevent this in the first place? We can put in drainages to ensure that when it floods, easy maneno azikui. We can put in water harvesting measures to these places if there's no water. And with all that, it's not even zaidi ya watu kufa. We are also experiencing issues that you would never even think are tied to the climate space. Imagine, for example, things like maybe the gender roles that exist in the community. In those places, especially the Asal regions, when there's no water, who goes to fetch water? It's the women. It's the girls, it's the children.
This is a role that,
it's in the society. Yes. So when they go there, sometimes they're attacked by wild animals. Sometimes some of them even die as they're trying to walk there. Some of those things are so heavy even on them to carry. So all these things, health issues now later come. So you find out that climate change and its effects touches on very different things. Health issues, gender issues, so many things come into play. And so what I took from this is that I was empowered. I got knowledge. I also got the capacity to be able to engage in such conversations. Even here right now to talk like this, I know what I'm talking about. I'm passionate about what I'm talking about because I know the change I want to bring. And now what I am doing, to the second part of your question, what I'm doing in my capacity. We used to do activities on tree planting and all that, but now it became more. We went now into education, like a trickle-down effect. The education I was trained on, I train others to also go and train others. So we organize workshops, we talk to the young people, sit down with them, sometimes even organize conferences to take them through this. And one particular one, which was here in Kenya, I was part of the team that was organizing the African Youth Climate Assembly during the ACS, and we brought in very many youth. We took them through, we had small sessions where we took them through all these things, and they got to get the information that was necessary. Even beyond that, we go to schools, we talk to the little children. They're taught about take care of the environment, but no one teaches them about what the ozone layer does, how it is affected, and what can you do about this. We have people in the universities, and that's where my most work has been.
At the university?
Yes, university level. That we engage with the youth in higher learning institutions. They have good projects lying in the shelves. Kwa nini zikae hapo? And there's a way we can come together. We give them the knowledge that we got from the summer school. We just sit down, brainstorm. How best can we present this, what we have? How best can we realize? Even in our own capacities, just organizing ourselves and making these projects a reality in the best that we can be. And so just to maybe sum it all up on what I'm doing, after summer school, I used to have a social enterprise I almost gave up on. But after summer school, I was like sustainability all the way. So I am a chief operating officer in an organization, or rather a social enterprise called Ekorafiki Africa. We deal with, you see the palm trees. They usually have stalks that are falling. So we realized when you take the stalks and you moist them kidogo, you press them, you're able to form very stylish cutlery depending on the mold that you have. And then you're getting an alternative for the disposable cutlery that we use. It is strong, it can be reused, and it's, I wish I came with those samples, man. I really hopefully we'll have another. Yes. And then this is such a good alternative. Even when you're done with it, if you want to reuse it, fine. If you want to dispose of it, it's fine. It can still be manure because we shred it and we also turn it into manure. These are some of the things that Nairobi Summer School helped me to realize my dream and to not give up on my social enterprise. We are working on it, and I'm continuing to have just more and more ideas. And as I've said, they still continue to involve us in programs. So either online, either physical. Also the network I got from the previous one, we tend to network. It's like a family.
Doing things together.
Yes. Kuna hizo get together, it's like a family, we continue connecting. That is just a snippet of what I benefited from being in Nairobi Summer School, and I'm still continuing to benefit, and I'm very grateful.
Wow, amazing. All right, back to you, Charles. You know, Shampi being one of the youths that you have trained in your school, what are some of the things that you have seen from the program, you know, while you're continuing in the program, because it has to be beneficial for you to even continue with it. You know, what are some of the things that you've seen in youths, and do you think that enough youths in Kenya know about the importance of climate justice?
That's a good question. You know, we can only ignore our youth to our peril. Like I did mention, the future of this continent. Actually, the biggest resource we have in this continent, apart from our Arab brand and of course our minerals, it is our young people, human capital. But we are allowing our human capital to actually ooze and to move out of the country. Now we are thinking so much about, you know, our young people who are now out of the country, you know, probably serving other countries, because probably we have not created a very conducive environment for them to really serve this particular continent, this nation. I think we need to put a lot of focus on our young people. They need us, but these are our future. And if we ignore them at this particular moment, then of course this continent is doomed. But if we realize these young people and take them as a resource, then we can be able to convert that resource, you know, into the future that we really want to see as a continent. So this particular program has been very, very transformational. Actually, it has achieved more than what we actually envisioned. When we crafted this process or this particular program, we thought probably we'd be able to raise activists, you know, on climate justice, and people who are independent and who can think, you know, outside the box, or should I say, thinking without the box. Sometimes, you know, when you think outside the box, you're tempted to jump back the box. So we were thinking of training people to think without the box and be able to really to create, you know, the solutions that we actually need, because they are creative, they have creative mind, and our young people also trained. And especially in this country, you know, Kenya, I think our young people generally have gone through education, and I think they are very well trained. You know, especially in IT, you know, they're coming up very, very well. But I want to say that we have seen some very good products coming from that. Already, Shampi mentioned to you that she's now very creative. That she's actually talking about nature-based solutions. Whatever they are doing is going to prevent, you know, use of plastics, for example. At the moment, UNE is going on, which was launched actually yesterday here at UNEP. And one of the conversations is about plastics, for example. How do you do the plastic, you know, challenge? And she's already providing a solution. So what are our governments doing in terms of supporting such initiatives of our young people? That's a big question we need to ask ourselves. Because until we hold their hands, because one thing, of course, they are cash strained as young people, because they're probably not necessarily, you know, employed. But how can we be able to focus and create programs that would support such a kind of a program she's running, you know, to ensure that these solutions that they're creating really make sense to this particular nation and become the capital transformation in that particular regard. She has also been able to work with young people across the continent. I remember in Cameroon a few months ago, she's one who presented the youth declaration on unlocking adaptation finance for the whole African youth, you know, in Cameroon. That was actually also communicated at COP in Dubai, where she also presented that. So we are building leaders and global leaders, not just leaders for this particular country. And I think that's what we have seen. I also want to give an example of already in Botswana called, I think, Saona Makota, who is negotiating for her country. She came, you know, very, very blank in that particular school, but now she's one of the lead negotiators in agriculture for Botswana. We also have Nyafo Ezekiel, you know, from Liberia, who is also negotiating now for the country on transparency issues. And we have many, many, many that I can talk about. And interesting enough, we have some who have also been able to get into formal employment through a certificate from that particular program. Even though it's only a 2 weeks, you know, kind of a training, but added to their academic, you know, certificates, they've been able to secure a job. I remember there's one lady by the name Inonge from Zambia, who came for the first cohort as a trainee, jobless. She was trained, went back, presented certificate, and she was employed by WWF. And now, in the third cohort, she actually sponsored about 10 from her organization to come for the school. Now, that is transformation. And I want to say that we really want to continue working closely on that. But beyond that, we really want to see, because we can only do so much as an organization. But I think we're only scratching the surface. And there is so much that needs to be done. So what we are doing, we want to immortalize this program by giving it, you know, revenue of its own, and by bringing in the government, and to ensure that climate justice is entrenched in the curriculum. So we already started conversations, you know, with the Ministry of Education, and there's some progress towards that particular line. And we are thinking, how can we be able to entrench then summer school within, or climate justice within the curriculum, all the way from elementary level. Let them learn from, from nursery school. Let's have a curriculum for primary school, for high school, and also for universities, and even, you know, postgraduate, you know, levels, so that we can be able to immortalize, you know, climate justice. Because I tell you what, climate change is not an environmental concept. Far from it. Climate change touches on entire human development, you know, spheres.
Yeah, like
you know, it's a health issue.
You know, health,
exactly.
know, gender,
exactly.
It cuts
It
across.
cuts across. And therefore, it's a key thing, and we really need to actually make sure that we integrate it in our school curricula.
All right. You talked about module. You know, you have professionals that have come up with different modules. So maybe you can mention, what are these modules touching on for someone who's maybe interested in joining?
Yeah, there are several modules, and I want to say that this can also be accessed, you know, through our website, summer school website, which we're going to provide so that people can actually be able to apply. We actually have already announced for the cohort. The applications are still going on, and we really want to call upon, especially our Kenyan youth, because we're also working with some partners across Kenya who are willing to support a lot of our Kenyan youth. So, and many partners are coming on board. So we need to ask people to actually apply, our young people. If you are from the age of 18 to 35, you qualify, regardless of which field you come from, you can actually be able to join in. But there's several modules. You know, we have a module, you know, on climate justice itself. We need them to understand what climate justice is all about. You know, we have modules, you know, on negotiations regarding, you know, how, you know, global, you know, discourse on climate change, you know, is evolving, and how COP negotiations, evolve. You know, there are some modules on agriculture, there are modules on health, okay, there are modules on climate finance, you know, there are modules on mitigation. So it's just a whole, you know, package that touches on many, many different aspects of climate change. And I think when you go to the website, you'll actually be able to see some of the modules really that you're working on. But the idea is to bring up well-rounded, you know, some sort of holistic approach in terms of how then we shape, you know, the minds of our young people. Okay,
great. Let me come back to you. When we talk about the injustice that is happening, and we've talked about most of it coming, you know, effects from the West and not Africa contributing. We have already contributed around less than 4% of it, but you also see some of the things even happening in the environment. Maybe we can talk of Congo, you know, what is happening there and how that's affecting the people, how that's affecting the climate change. You know, Congo, we can talk about different African countries. So what can be done, you know, in that regard?
The issue of Congo is a very heavy one, and it's actually quite an emotional one. When I was at COP, during the day that most of the civil societies were protesting, I was holding a placard like this. And then I realized I hadn't read what my placard was saying. And then I turned it like this, and my placard read, there can never be, there is no harvesting of minerals that's causing, you know, climate injustice. Basically, that's a paraphrase. Basically, what it was talking about is that as we are trying to take or harvest these minerals, is harvest a good word for this? As we're trying to, you get what I'm saying? As we're trying to, harvest the minerals, what are the climate justice concerns that are coming, Congo should be the richest country in this Africa.
In Africa, yeah.
In fact, in the whole world, because of the gold reserves it has and all other minerals it has. But what is happening there? So these are some of the things that, these are some of the realities that are brought to you when you're in Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. And then we ask also ourselves these questions: what can we do? And then we come to this conclusion that we are the youth, the energy that is in us, the burning energy that is in us. One of the things that we could do is, one, acquire the knowledge, know how to go about. If you're put in a negotiation table, what are the needs of your country, and particularly what is wrong, what is making our country be exploited like this. This is not just in Congo, in everywhere else. And number two, who am I? A youth. What role can I play? Youth advocacy, which is one of the topics that is taught in climate justice. How best do we go about this youth advocacy? We, the youth, for sure, have that energy, as I've said, and we are the fighters of this continent, and our fight is against climate change, or rather climate injustice. So our biggest youth is the advocacy tool. How best to go about it, how to approach it. Ikitaka pia kuskuma, unajua vile utasukuma mpaka mweze kusikika. It is a problem we have. Sometimes people say, you know, nikelele, no. If we have a problem, we must talk about this until it's hard. We talk about this problem, we try to find solutions, and yani, when we are brought to the table, we are not just coming with problems, we are also coming with solutions and the ideas that we have, because very many youth are creative, very many youth just need people to have faith in them. And for me, I usually see PACJA, my personal opinion, as an organization that usually has so much faith in the youth. Sometimes you would just sit, especially during the first times of Nairobi Summer School, you know, all the concepts have not kicked in, and I'm like, wow, this is, like, they have so much faith in us. But by the end of the school, you get to realize that it's not about having faith in us, it's about us, the youth, actually realizing what role can we play. You know, people are used to seeing youth, wanaona huyu ni fujo, you know, they want to dismiss nini, and sometimes it's our fault. Sometimes it's our fault because we do not know how best to go about this. But after we have known how best to go about this, we are then empowered, and then we take a discourse on advocacy and how best to free ourselves is basically what climate justice issue is about to the youth.
Okay, amazing. I think that answers it very well. Charles, you want to add something to it?
You did what mention Congo. And I want to mention something around that. There is a new concept that is now in town, and this is the concept of just transition. You know, and we're thinking about how do we transition from fossil fuels to renewables.
Yeah, true.
Now, that's a very interesting conversation for Africa, particularly considering that we need some minerals for transition. Which are these minerals? The critical, we're calling them critical minerals, and one of them is actually lithium, for example. Now, some of these, and cobalt. Now, these minerals are actually mostly found in Congo. And the pride of Africa is that wherever there are minerals, we fight. Of course, we know that these fights are actually programmed somewhere else, you know, so that people can continue stealing from the continent. That's what it is, and that's a sad reality. And unfortunately, our people have already, you know, exposed themselves, you know, to some of those particular, you know, tricks, so that we end up losing some of our minerals. Now, critical minerals are actually being exploited at a very, very, very high rate, which is worrying. Yeah, these are some minerals that we'll need for transition, because lithium, you know, when you talk about, you know, cobalt, you know, those ones are useful in moving to green energy, you know, particularly because of the batteries, because of electronics and so on and so forth. So we need those minerals, but they're being exploited at a very, very, very high rate from the continent. So that I think a few years to come, we will need those minerals, and we will be looking for them, and they will be nowhere to be found. So we have started that conversation in the continent. I remember about 2 weeks ago, so we had a convening with the African Union, Africa Development Bank, and United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. So we organized an event in Addis Ababa at the side of the African Union Summit. And one of the conversations, because we were reflecting on the outcome of COP28, but one of the conversations we had was about critical minerals. So how do we move? How do we protect these minerals from the continent? How do we ensure there is fairness in terms of how these minerals are actually being exploited? Now, if you look at what is happening in Zambia, because Zambia also produces copper. Look at lithium that is actually being produced in Congo. If there was a very good cooperation between Zambia, for example, and Congo, we can be able to produce batteries at 30% less than the way we are importing them from outside. And those resources would actually remain in the continent.
It's actually ours, but we are still importing.
That's the
from
point.
outside, you know.
So it's a conversation that is picking up, a critical community conversation. It's going to be a big debate in the coming years.
Wow. So at least we can say that Africa, we are, you know, in this conversation of climate justice, can we say that confidently that we are actually moving ahead, that we have made strides towards achieving something good?
We have, but we are only scratching the surface. And like I did mention, until we learn to exploit the potential in these young people, we'll have wasted our time. We have not served humanity the right way. So we must invest in our young people. We are making some strides, but there's still so much that we need to do.
All right. Before we come to a close on this conversation, I'd want you to mention some of the things, you know, some of the concepts that people need to know around climate in general, climate justice, climate change, you know, some of the things that, you know, people should know about. I know there's carbon credit, you know, what is that really for yeah.
Okay. I will start with a point that was mentioned by Mr. Charles, which was a very enlightening moment for me while I was at Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice, and that is the point on just transition. Just transition is basically this, that if we are in a situation where we are exposing ourselves to climate risks, or rather, what example could I use? Yes, maybe the situation, like for instance, somewhere like where we are looking for a cleaner alternative to cooking, or even a clean alternative to electricity. Yeah. What will happen if this clean alternative comes? What about the jobs of those people? Like, what will happen to them? Where will they go? How? Like, what will go on? And that concept of just transition then applies in this context, that we will move into that clean energy space and create we will move in a way that is very just. Yeah, that people don't lose their jobs, or rather just have a change of their jobs and go to this other side and be well. For me, it is a very important concept because, as I had said, as the youth, we have the time and we are in the most productive times of our lives. So we are at a very good place of, you know, the things that creativity in this age of innovation, literally the best moment to exist in this earth. As we come up with projects, we are looking at just transition, that we come up with a project that is benefiting the communities. No one is getting left behind, leave no one behind. The other two concepts that are usually tied together is adaptation and mitigation. That adaptation is, I like to put it in very simple terms, projects that are targeted towards building resilience. The climate change effects are here. Even if Africa does nothing for the next 20 years, it's still going to happen. So what then can we do for us to be resilient? That is adaptation. And then mitigation. What can we do to, it's true, it's not our fault that we don't produce the most emissions, but still emissions is emissions. So what can we do to help reduce the emissions that are still being produced? And these are very, very important concept, loss and damages. What is actually loss and damage? That loss and damage begins where adaptation has failed. That there was no adaptation in the first place, and therefore there is loss and damage. People have died, property has been lost, whatever catastrophes have happened because of this climate justice issue. So for me, these are some of the most important concepts that are very important for not just the youth, but everyone, including children, have to learn, so that even as they grow up and even us as we progress, we come up with projects that are one size fit all. Adaptation, mitigation, just touching on all those things. Those are the important concepts. I would say it's very important for people to understand.
What would you say carbon credit lies? Is that in the adaptation?
So carbon credits majorly is on mitigation. And basically what carbon credits are is two countries, from the global north, from the global south. I am the biggest emitter, you're not the biggest emitter. And we are supposed to cap our temperatures at 1.5 degrees, of which I'm aware now we have passed it. We're supposed to put it under that. That is according to the Paris Agreement. So I'm not willing to reduce my emissions. So what do? That if I am supposed to, this is just a rough example, if I am supposed to produce only like 20% of emissions, but in reality I produce like 30%. So may I come to you, I tell you, I don't, like me, the reality is I don't want to reduce my 30% to 20. So what I do, I come to you, we plant, this is layman's language, we plant you in your land, I plant trees that will be able to absorb 10%
of my emissions.
So as I make 30, there's that 10% that is being produced, so ni kama ni 20 in a way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes,
it makes sense. But now the problem with the carbon markets, even now there's an ongoing bill, and I'm fortunate to be part of a team that's working on, part of a small team of youth that is working on how to help build on petition, which is another thing that I think we the youth really should be engaged in knowing how to write these things. There's an ongoing bill on carbon markets and its regulations. There is very big need for regulations. And our stand is that carbon markets are really false solutions. Because what is that? It's like a murderer continue to murdering
Let
you.
me kill you and then
just because they can afford it. And even us because we want the money. We are broke, you know. And the sad reality is that even as they do that, that comes with many problems. Right now, as we speak in Kenya, already there have been displacements of people because we want to plant these trees on this land. And sometimes the lands that they're going to, they're forgetting people that are there are pastoralists, like where I come from. That our land, just because my animals are grazing on that, just because my animals are grazing on that chair, doesn't mean they only graze there. They sometimes even graze here. You come, you plant your, for instance, jatofa trees, which are mostly used for the carbon markets. You come and plant them here. So when it's time for my cattle to migrate, they come here. They can't, there's no grass because those trees were planted there. And sometimes even people are being displaced to make room for these things. And even worse, the rates at which they are buying these carbon credits from us, it is ridiculously low. It is painfully low. That wewe kwako, you are planting a whole tree, umengangana nayo, imenda imeka, we are being given it's not even peanuts what we are being given here in Africa. They buy them at higher rates elsewhere, but when they come to Africa, it is meager amounts. Very unfair. There's high need of regulating, and in fact, in my opinion, it's not even something that should be considered. Ni jambo la kustaajabisha.
You have clearly stated it, you know, and you've brought a different view to it because we have had people and they have supported, you know, the carbon credit.
Because we are broke. Because they want that money.
Totally.
And injustice.
So, yeah, we shouldn't accept it really because we look like we're very desperate. Charles, you look like you want to say something before we close.
Thank you, Shampi. You know, and you brought in a very, very controversial conversation because the world now, I mean Africa, is now running, you know, into this very big scam. Already Tanzania, Zambia, and some other countries have committed more than 8 million hectares for carbon projects. I started working on carbon projects when that concept came to be in 2006. You know, during the times of the Kyoto Protocol, which was the first climate agreement, and Article 12 introduced what we call CDM, or Clean Development Mechanism. That's how the carbon credit, you know, business started. But now this is transitioning to what we call Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Article 6.2, 6.4 are the ones that are actually anchoring climate, carbon conversations. And people think it's a big business. Shampi has already mentioned it. It's a big scam because the thing is, the investment that you put in actually generating those tons of carbon equivalents, because carbon is stored in terms of tons of carbon equivalents. The prices have been ranging from $5 to a maximum of $10 per ton of carbon equivalents. Now, if you look at the amount of investment you put to generate that 1 ton, the price is not commensurate, you know, to the investment per se. And therefore, this is what we call greenwashing. In this regard, somebody else is continuing to emit. It's like buying a license to pollute and paying somebody. Take an example of a poor man's cow. You go and buy the poor man's cow at a very low price because the poor man has to take the kid to school. You get the point, and therefore you dictate the price. In most cases, when you go to the market, it's you, the owner of the commodity, that dictate the price of the commodity. But now, if we cannot even control prices of commodities that we see, like coffee, the prices are determined somewhere else, and our tea, how can we control the price of something we cannot see, the carbon itself? So it's a big conversation, but our people are already duped into thinking there's money in carbon. But we are telling people, and we look like the bad boy here, as Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, but we're telling people this is greenwashing. We must be careful. In fact, carbon credits can only make sense if then they pay us, you know, amount that is commensurate to the investment that we put. But as it starts now, it's a big scam. It's going to be the next big problem for the continent.
All right. Well, Well put. Thank you very much for sharing such amazing insights on this particular topic. I want to end by letting you let the viewer know how can they join the program, how can they enroll, what's your website, yeah, and all that. Let me allow Charles to say.
Thank you so much. You know, if you just go to the internet and type Nairobi Summer School,
You get it.
you just never get into the website and actually be able to actually apply for that. I think we still have a window through which people can actually be able to apply. I think it should be www.Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice.
Okay.
So you can actually be able to access and be able to join in and register yourself. And we of course do shortlisting. Normally we get overwhelming numbers, but you may be lucky, you know, to be part and parcel of that particular process. But for those who are unable to come physically, they can join virtually. We have a virtual platform, and we're able to sponsor people to join virtually. This time around, we are going to hold it in Chuka University.
Okay.
And the last 3 years, we've done it at Kenyatta University. But we have a host of many other universities, you know, in that particular, you know, program from across the continent. So Chuka is only a host, but we have many other universities that are actually part and parcel of that particular process. So come on, come on, and your life will never be the same again.
Clearly. All right. Thank you very much once again for coming on board. We really appreciate this. We hope to have you again. All right, so that has been a conversation on Youths for Climate Justice. I hope that you have taken something from this and known the importance of climate justice and why your voice is very important in this particular conversation. So now we're going to take a short break, and then Brian Sakwa will be coming up next with yet another interesting conversation. Stick with us.